guys, Chris here from Carolot Farm. Today is the last day in July, and so I want to give you some July updates. You know, I gave you mid-July updates, but now it's the end of July. And again, like always, a lot has changed. What hasn't changed though is our friend Sweetheart and little Rocky are getting breakfast, and that's what I'm doing now. I say that hasn't changed. That's not entirely true, because a month ago, the last week in June, we were actually trying to wean Rocky off of his grain, and we have since reinstated it. So I was telling you, about a month ago, we tried to cut Rocky's grain out. His weight was looking good. He was picking up extra weight with the grass. But when I returned home from a camping trip just after the 4th of July, that evening, Rocky had a second bout of mild gas colic. And because the only thing I could figure that was different leading up to that was having cut out that little bit of grain that he was getting, we have since reinstated his grain. His metabolic system has been very happy, no more digestive issues. So again, it could have been a fluke, but I was thinking that maybe he is just super sensitive when it comes to dietary changes. And so we have just kind of started giving him that handful of grain again. So that was kind of an update, because we took it out and then we promptly put it back in. What has become our morning routine is, yes, I come down, I feed Sweetheart and Rocky in the feedlots, and then I like to come over and open our side paddock gate, because the minis have been getting a couple of morning grazing hours out here. This is a slight modification. It's one of those things that we keep adding in, taking out, adding in, taking out. And that's just sort of been the way things have been going around here as we're trying to figure out what the needs are of these minis. But currently, for the last couple of weeks, I'd say the last 2 weeks, the minis are only grazing in the side paddock for the morning hours. About a month ago, Sweetheart's weight was right where I wanted it to be, and I was then steadily cutting her grain back to kind of get her at a more suitable maintenance level. She no longer needed to gain weight. And so again, over the last several weeks, we were scaling back. And for the last 2 weeks, she's only been getting a half a cup of grain, which I think is a 4-ounce scoop that I'm currently using. It's a very small amount of grain. And so both Sweetheart and Rocky are only getting the 4 ounces currently once a day. But I feel like her weight has still been kind of creeping up. And that is why we are now limiting everyone's grazing time here in the side paddock. This is where I think the grass is still the most ideal. And the horses are currently only coming out here for a couple of hours in the morning. And then I close off that gate and they have access to the other paddocks. So they're getting plenty of grass. I just don't want them to get too much grass. Something that we have been keeping quite a bit of track on is the amount of hay our horses are eating, or the lack thereof sometimes. For the last few weeks though, I can certainly say that the horses have been increasing the amount of hay that they have been eating, and so I have been giving them a little more. I would say though, for the last 2 to 3 weeks, I have been regularly giving the horses 2 flakes of hay in the morning and then 2 flakes again in the evening. And I'm still splitting that hay between the 2 stalls. So I take one flake and I shake it into 2 corners, and then I do the same for the second stall. So when I looked at how much hay they've eaten this past month, with a little bit of additional hay I'll tell you about in a moment, I think our horses have eaten around 8 or 9 bales for the month of July. We are currently in the midst of our second summer heat wave, which is why I'm out here early this morning trying to beat the sun that has not yet crept above the tree line. I come out in the mornings though, and like you saw, I always start by feeding the horses. I then clean the stalls. And the next thing I really try to do is do as much of my prep work for the afternoon hours, because I've been bringing Shenanigans and Sweetheart into the shade shelter in the afternoons and turning the fans on them. I may have shared, I believe in one of our previous videos, that Shenanigans does tend to get very sweaty on his shoulder and his neck. And so I bring them here to the shade shelter where I can assuredly know that they're in the shade and I can have my fans blowing on them. We have 2 really nice fans that are currently pointed, you know, on the corners facing inward. so they get that nice cross breeze. I always make sure they have a nice clean bucket of water. You can see my blue water bucket there tied to the fence. I wait and I fill that though right around 1 o'clock when I bring the horses into the shelter. And that way the water is cold, it's fresh, and I know they'll be the most likely to drink it. But the last thing I do as I prepare to bring them into the shade is I get them a flake of hay. There's a little bit of grass here in the shade shelter. It's not a lot, and it's mostly crabgrass, and the horses, although they could eat it, they kind of prefer not to. And so I've been putting a flake of hay in here for Shenanigans and Sweetheart to share, and that's been working really well. Hay in place. I put about 3/4 of a flake in the middle for them to share, and then I put a little bit here by the fence line because Snuggles likes to come over and share. She keeps them company. This is kind of funny. As I'm filming this, Shenanigans says, "Oh yes, I'm ready for the shade and the fans." He's become very, very fond of the shade shelter and his afternoon sort of preferential treatment. So we'll see. It's funny that they're all coming in here though. Even though they have access to the side grass paddock, the fact that they've come in here to nibble on the hay, again, just tells me that they are enjoying the hay these days. I would still say we have decent grass, but it must be drying up if they're this happy to come and eat hay. Walked Rocky all the way over to the stall so that he could see that there is in fact hay in here. And Shenanigans is coming. I have not finished picking the stalls. That was next on my list. But you can see here that I put hay in these 2 left-hand corners of the stall. And that way I know multiple minis can come in and eat very peacefully together. The reason I do not put hay though in the other front corner, which I used to do, is because the 2 mares have started peeing on it. They stand here, especially Sweetheart with her butt in the corner, and she just ruins the hay. And so if I'm putting it on the left-hand side of the stall, I have just noticed that no one seems to bother it, but they do eat it quite well. Even Snuggles has come on into the stall to find her morning hay. Usually they stay out and they graze for a couple of hours before they come in to eat hay. I'm a little surprised they came in so quick this morning. Sweetheart is still out there, however. You know, she's the one who probably needs the least amount of grass, but I will give her just her limited grazing hours and then I'll close that paddock off. I'm so happy that this kind of happened the way it did though. I mean, you can see I really take my lead from the horses, and if you pay close enough attention and you spend enough time with them, they will absolutely let you know what they need and want and what their preferences are. And when I see them come in and want to scarf up the hay like this, it tells me I definitely want to keep putting it out for them because there's a need for it. My chunky bunkie here is still grazing. I guess I'll also share with her, because we're currently in the midst of the second heat wave, I did start her on a round of decks, her second round of decks, about a week and a half ago. We had a hot weekend and she was then having significantly increased labored breathing on Monday, which is when I started her on this next round of decks. She's responded well, and we then had the second heat wave right on the heels of that. So it was kind of perfect timing because the vet had recommended that we go ahead and start her on decks before a really big heat wave just to help open up her airways. Now, I'm still a little concerned about decks, and I still have some reservations, and I'm watching her very, very closely to make sure I don't see any signs of founder or laminitis. But so far, so good. Tomorrow is her last dose in the second round, and hopefully I won't have to give her any more, but as it's almost August, there's a pretty good chance that she might need more assistance. So again, I'm trying to work with my vet because there might be something else that we could do for her and use to treat her asthma flare-ups that isn't necessarily this particular medicine. So I'll keep you posted if we switch her to something else. But so far, so good. I mentioned earlier that the horses are getting limited turnout on that side paddock because the grass is still currently the best there. In the ring though, if you look behind me, the horses are still happy to come and graze, but we've had a really dry week, maybe even a dry week and a half. And you can see the ground is getting very sparse. There's a lot of really dry, just dirt that you can see. And so the grass on this half of the ring, which is what the horses prefer to graze on, is super, super grazed low. The other half, where we were spreading manure earlier in the year, and I'm still spreading some, is quite lush, but it's a mostly crabgrass. And at this point in time, the horses are preferring to nibble on the other grasses versus the crabgrass. So the grass, I would say, is beginning to dry up, which isn't necessarily a bad thing given how heavy Sweetheart is getting. But it's just one more thing that we're watching and monitoring closely this time of year. I see where Sweetheart has come in to join the others on the morning hay. You can see Sweetheart and Snuggles are on the right-hand side in that right stall, and Rocky and Shenanigans have moved on over to the left-hand stall. So right now everyone's very happy, they're content, and I'll leave that side paddock open for another hour or two just in case they want to go back out and graze. The hay that we are feeding our minis currently is a second cutting Timothy mixed grass. This was grown last summer of 24. We still have quite a few bales in the hay barn. We've not yet lined up winter hay for this coming season, but it's something we'll want to start doing. But we've been pretty happy with this. It's a little stemmy, but the horses pick through it well. And then what they don't eat, I just use for added bedding. I have no problems using it for such. Now that I have finished up my morning routine here with the horses, I'm going to go hop on the mower. The sun is shining, it's a beautiful day, and try to tackle our front field, which is definitely getting a bit overgrown these days. Hey guys, I just finished mowing our front field here. You might be wondering, why does it look more like a hay field? Well, good question. We have had perfect growing conditions for grass as of late, right? It's been relatively warm. We've had a lot of afternoon thunder showers, with the exception of the last week in June, our first heat wave, and this last week in July, our second heat wave. So the grass grew and grew and grew. It got to the point where it was so tall, so thick that our mower was really struggling to mow it. So we had to let it dry a little, which is why it's just been mowed really well for a second time today. Now, that being said, we have thunder in the distance. Rain is coming, so we know it's going to take off again. I just hope that all of this grass that's been cut that is now laying down doesn't kill the grass below. You can see there are some areas in the corners back here, and I've got another big patch right here. That grass, however, was so tall and thick, the mower was not going to cut that. And so I think I'm going to have to come at it with just the weed whacker and kind of knock it down, and then eventually come back and mow over it. So it's this multi-step process because unfortunately our front field got away from us. Just now a little after 1 o'clock, and this is the time of day when I tend to come out. I check on the horses, primarily Sweetheart and Shenanigans, and then I put them into the shade shelter on days that are really hot and humid, such as today. However, because we have this thunderstorm rolling in, I don't want to put my horses in the feedlots and have them locked up in case a big storm approaches. So I'm going to lay eyes on them right now and then see what the weather does. I have Shenanigans right here, who is coming to say hi. He really would like to go in by the fans, and he is a little sweaty on his shoulder. Hi, sweet boy. Let's see if I can show you. He is a little sweaty here on his shoulder and his chest. He really does like the fans. And Sweetheart, I see off in the distance. I'm gonna go check her, but I'm pretty sure she's getting sweaty. As long as she isn't huffing and puffing though too badly, I will leave her out. We have a nice breeze. And again, things are cooling. Stop, mister. He's a mess. So I'm looking at her now. Rain is beginning to fall. I think she'll be just fine though until after the storm passes. I've got Snuggles hot on my shoulder here. They're all very friendly. Give me attention, give me attention. But again, I think I'm gonna leave Sweetheart out in the field now, and I'll come back once the storm is beyond us. So I'm going to first grab this big pile of hay and put it in the stall so it isn't totally soaked. Now that this first storm of the day has passed us by, I have brought Sweetheart and Shenanigans into the shade shelter, and I've turned the fans on. I also got them a fresh flake of hay
And like I did earlier, I have put a little bit of hay over here on the left-hand side for Snuggles. She really does like to come and hang out and keep these two company. Snuggles also has that blue fan that you can see by the fence pointed on her. And then I have these two black fans that are angled into the feedlot to give that nice cross breeze. You know, Shenanigans really appreciates it, and so does Sweetheart. You know, she is very relaxed here, enjoying the cool shade. I leave these guys in the shade shelter here probably until about 8 o'clock in the evening if I can. I find that even as the days cool, the humidity can rise, so the later the better to turn them out. And then there's smart little Rocky. He is happy to come on into the shade of the stall and clean up some leftovers from the morning. He's a pretty independent guy.
Thank you so much for joining me today as I gave you this last day of July update. Everyone here on the farm is doing really well. Rocky did have that second bout of mild gas colic around the 4th of July. Well, just a couple of days after, I guess. He's done really well since. You know, Sweetheart had her asthma flare up the last week in June. She's been doing well. You know, Shenanigans is loving the shade shelter and the fans. Snuggles is looking great. She's a little chunkier than she was a month ago. So again, I would just say everyone's doing really well here on the farm, and we all want to say thank you for joining us. Check back soon because we're always up to something, and we so love sharing our journey with you. So stay cool, be safe, and we hope to see you soon. Bye guys.